As soon as we say Spider-Man Noir, guys, we will immediately picture the version voiced by Nicolas Cage from the Spider-Verse. But actually, the Spider-Man Noir from the comics might be much better than you think. He was built in the 1930s, an era heading towards a great war, with skyrocketing prices, political failures, and corruption, during the time of the Great Depression, an era of immense despair. That's why this Peter Parker is not a light-hearted, witty young man saving people in the middle of a neon-lit metropolis like the usual friendly neighborhood Spider-Man we are used to seeing. He is deeply rooted in poverty, deprivation, families sleeping on the streets, wickedness, and the evils of the world, created with a dark tone. Because of this, he carries a gun, shoots his enemies, and faces villains who are more grounded, realistic, and dark. For example, Spider-Man Noir's Green Goblin is crazier and more repulsive than the usual Goblin versions. He doesn't just sit at the top of a tower like a rich man, causing trouble for his colleagues, other wealthy people, or business rivals. He comes down from the high towers himself to crush the poor and destitute under his feet from all sides, making them bow down completely. So, everything opens with the words of Ben Urich, an old reporter working at the Daily Bugle newspaper. An autumn evening in this broken era is a wicked thing to survive. Meanwhile, Jonah Jameson, as usual, barks out, "Get me pictures, Ben. Pictures that show people what is really happening in the outside world. I want the deprived men, the hopeless women, the sleeping children sneezing in the middle of the garbage. I want the hunger in their eyes. I want pictures that will bring tears to people's eyes as soon as they see them. Pictures that touch the heart." Because of that shouting, Ben has now arrived in an alleyway to take a picture of an old man and a child. When he asks for permission, saying, "If you don't mind, could I take a picture of you, sir?" The old man asks back, "Yeah, which newspaper are you from, kid?" When Ben replies that he is from the Daily Bugle, the old man laughs miserably and mocks. "The Bugle is my favorite, you know. Look here, I wrap the front pages around my body. I put the sports pages inside my shoes. And I use the business pages to wipe my feet, kid." At that moment, Ben cannot even get angry at the old man. He realizes that the news, the newspapers, and the truth they sell are nothing more than pieces of paper used to keep warm for the people who are actually suffering. Meanwhile, among the crowd, there is an old woman rallying, protesting, and organizing people as a politician and a fighter for truth. That old woman is none other than May Parker, Peter's aunt, who recently lost her husband in this broken era. Raising her fist, the old woman says, "Years ago, the government promised us that we would be fulfilled with jobs and lives. Now, about 3 million people have become unemployed. Instead of helping, that same government organization used the military to oppress and discriminate against ordinary people with force. They used tanks and tear gas to threaten and bully innocent citizens. Now this guy named Roosevelt has arrived again. Do you think things will change under his term? All they want is to turn our blood and sweat into their own profits." While she is speaking, many interested people arrive, but disruptors arrive immediately as well. Those people are the henchmen and thugs of Norman Osborn. As soon as they arrive, they say with a harsh tone, "If you guys don't like the way we govern, you can immediately take a plane and leave for the Russians and communists," and yell, "Pull her down." That's when her nephew, Peter Parker, steps in to stop them. However, almost instantly, within the blink of an eye, he gets beaten up by the 3 thugs, and the situation changes with the old lady being tied up with ropes at that moment. When nobody else stepped in to help, Ben Urich, the reporter, arrived and quickly snapped a photo with his camera. He threatened the thugs, asking, "You guys are acting so wild. Do you want to be on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper?" Fearing a bad reputation, the villains cursed from all directions and retreated. Ben then escorted May and her nephew back to their home, where he learned that they were among the people living miserably in a social welfare center. After May thanked him and left, Ben noticed something special about Peter and asked, "Hey, kid, you can return late tonight, right?" To talk further, he brought Peter into the city, heading straight towards Black Cat's nightclub. All along the way, Peter was bursting with anger. He explained to Ben that the Goblin and his thugs were the ones who murdered his uncle, Uncle Ben. He couldn't understand why they were trying to break a system that was already collapsing, and why they had to suffer the attacks of these unrelated gangsters. Ben wanted to show Peter that the world is much more cruel and ruthless than he thought. As soon as they entered the club, Ben got some wine and began explaining the reality of the current world. He understood Peter's mind. He believed that there are good and bad people in the world, and if the good people just try a little harder, the whole world will become beautiful. However, the world is not that simple. Let me show you the real truth, Ben said, pointing towards the people sitting in the corners of the club. The first one is the city mayor himself. The second one is the highest chief of police. And the next one is the biggest businessman in the city. Even in the case of his uncle's murder, they were all involved from the top. Everything is connected like a spider's web, and the worst part is the one who just walked in, Norman Osborn, the Goblin monster himself. When Norman Osborn entered the club with his 3 disciples, nobody really knew why he was called the Goblin. He is full of eccentricities, constantly going to freak shows and strange places at night to recruit people for his criminal gang. One of them is Craven, a beast tamer who understands animals very well. Another one, Vulture, is extremely wicked. When Ben first met him, he was living in a cage, eating raw chickens. While Ben was explaining why nobody dared to mess with that monster, Norman walked straight towards them, staring directly into their eyes. He wasn't an ordinary person. Knowing both Peter and Ben, he mockingly asked, "Hey Peter, I heard about your uncle. I heard he died because a pack of dogs surrounded and tore him apart. Is that right?" Provoked by the insult, Peter lost his temper, grabbed a nearby wine glass, and threw it at Norman. Norman was slightly angered, but they didn't want to mess with Ben Urich. So, Norman said, "Hey Ben, teach this boy you brought along some manners," and ordered the club owner, Felicia, to kick them both out. Once outside, Ben scolded Peter, saying, "What you did was the worst and most foolish thing to do." But Peter wasn't wrong either. Almost everyone knows that the Goblin is committing murders and destruction in this city, but nobody dares to open their mouth or speak the truth. All we need is 1 or 2 brave people like us to fight back, and then we can overthrow that monster, Peter explained. The reason Peter hated this monster so much was because he personally found his uncle's brutally murdered body. Those monsters had tied his uncle with ropes so he couldn't move, beat him mercilessly, and worst of all, let the dogs tear him apart while he was still alive. Hearing this, Ben's face went pale, and he fell into deep thought. But he really liked this kid. He saw his younger self in Peter's stubbornness, love for truth, and refusal to back down. Qualities that could one day save the world. Therefore, he brought Peter to Jonah Jameson, and introduced him. He opened a path for Peter to become a reporter just like him, making him a staff member who takes the exact kind of heart-wrenching, tear-jerking pictures that Jameson always wanted. However, Peter still didn't know the grand reason why Ben was helping him so much. Ben finally revealed this hidden reason to the audience only at night, when he was alone, silent, and lonely in his room, showing what he had never told anyone before. Before he revealed the truth, he painfully pulled open a drawer. Using the spoons, lighters, and syringes inside, he shot up his drugs. The secrets he was hiding were just that dark and heavy. Because the thugs didn't just torture Uncle Ben in countless ways. At the very end, contrary to what Peter believed, they didn't set the dogs on him. They actually let the monstrous vulture devour him alive. After being treated like a caged beast for so many years, the vulture himself had transformed into a raw flesh-eating, cannibalistic monster. But do you know what the worst part is? Do you know how Ben knew every single gruesome detail of Uncle Ben being eaten alive? When he confessed, "Because I was right there watching it happen," Peter finally realized why the criminals never messed with Ben Urich from the start. Ben himself was a criminal, working hand-in-hand with them. Deep down, he felt burdened by his own guilt and felt like he owed Peter. That's why he kept him close and spent his nights helping Peter build his career as a proper reporter. Then one night, while Ben was completely passed out from his usual drinks and drugs, Peter arrived at his apartment, planning to wrap up a journalism piece. Looking at the mess of substances scattered across the room, Peter finally understood that Ben was nothing more than a hopeless junkie and an alcoholic. But in an era where everyone finds an escape through vice, this wasn't too shocking for him. What was strange, however, was the sudden, loud ringing of the telephone in the room. Driven by curiosity, Peter picked it up without saying a single word. The voice on the other end said, Hey Spider, before my shift ends down at the docks, a shipment of the Goblin's ancient smuggled artifacts is coming in. Once we finish clearing out what we need to clear, you can come down and take your photos. With that, the line went dead. You see, Ben had a dirty deal with these criminal syndicates. To create a fake scenario where everyone gets their cut, the criminals would do their job, and only after the coast was clear, Ben would swoop in to snap photos and scoop the news. He was just a corrupt, freeloading extortionist after all. Not fully understanding the gravity of the situation, Peter decided to follow the address he heard over the phone to capture the story. Meanwhile, inside a warehouse at the docks, the thugs were chatting loudly while moving crates. According to their conversation, the massive spider-shaped statue and the crates they brought carried the ancient curses of old tribal shamans. They even mentioned rumors that touching any item inside would cause instant death. As fate would have it, a careless mobster dropped one of the large crates mid-sentence. The crate burst wide open, and an absolute swarm of spiders poured out from within. The spiders swarmed and bit everyone nearby, mercilessly killing the entire gang on the spot. Watching all of this unfold from a high rafter, Peter was completely paralyzed with fear. He didn't dare move a muscle, terrified of falling. But it didn't take long before the escaping spiders crawled their way up to the ceiling rafters, climbed onto Peter's hand, and bit down hard into his skin. Peter instantly felt a bizarre, grotesque sensation wash over him. He felt his skin tearing away from his skeleton. And right before his eyes, a massive, terrifying spider god manifested. Staring down at Peter, the entity spoke. Everyone I have bitten was wicked. They harbored evil intentions, which is why they perished instantly. But you do not possess a corrupt soul. Therefore, I shall grant you a grander purpose. I bestow upon you the great curse of power. As it spoke, Peter blacked out from pure terror. When he finally awoke, he found himself hanging upside down from the wall, suspended by webs. He felt a sudden rush in his head, the spider sense, warning him that enemies were approaching. He fell from the ceiling, but instead of crashing down and breaking his bones, he landed effortlessly and gracefully on the ground. Amused, he remarked, "Well, look at that," marking his transformation into Spider-Man and bringing the comic issue to a dramatic close. True to the noir genre, this story is incredibly dark, grimy, and gritty. It stands completely apart from the standard Peter Parker storylines we are all used to. By the time this video goes live, Nicolas Cage's live-action Spider-Noir series might already be out. I truly hope everyone enjoys this breakdown. If you want to see how this comic continues, let me know down in the comment section. My plan is to cover every new episode of Spider-Man Noir as it drops, breaking it down part by part until we reach the very end of the series. Thank you so much to every single one of you who stayed and watched until this very moment. I'll see you all in the next video.